My father humiliated me at my own mother's birthday dinner, screaming that I would always be second best to my sister. He had no idea I was the one who had been secretly paying his mortgage for the last 5 years. So I smiled, cut him off completely, and set a trap that would expose my sister's web of lies and leave them both with nothing. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The flu had settled deep in my bones, a heavy, aching misery that left me weak and shivering. I'd spent the last 3 days curled up on my sofa, cocooned in blankets, surviving on tea and broth while my husband, Nicholas, hovered with a worried frown. That evening, I was finally feeling marginally human. I'd managed to shower and was sitting at my desk, trying to reschedule the work meetings I'd missed when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my father, David. "Need you to call me. Urgent, about the house." A familiar knot of dread tightened in my stomach. It was always urgent, and it was always about the house. For 5 years, ever since my father had been forced into early retirement from his factory job, a situation largely of his own making, I had been secretly paying his mortgage. It was an arrangement born of a moment of weakness on my part and a moment of desperation on his. He and my mother, Sophie, were on the brink of foreclosure. I had just received a major promotion, and I couldn't bear the thought of my mother, who had sacrificed everything for us, being homeless. So I'd set up an anonymous payment system through a trust managed by my lawyer and friend, Mia. My parents believed it was a grant from a housing assistance program for former factory workers. It was the only way I could ensure the money went to the mortgage and not into the black hole of my sister Chloe's latest business venture. I pressed the call button, the receiver cold against my ear. "Hi, Dad, I got your text. What's wrong?" I was still congested, and my voice sounded thin. "Jasmine, you sound terrible," he said, not with concern but with impatience. "I've had the flu, Dad. I'm just getting over it. What's going on with the house?" "It's not about the house, not really," he snapped. "It's about your mother's birthday. It's this Saturday, and Chloe is planning a beautiful dinner for her at the Saffron Grill. She's reserved the private room. She's handling everything." I blinked, confused. "That sounds lovely. What does that have to with me?" "Well, the deposit for the room is significant," he hedged. "And Chloe was wondering if you could, help her out. She's putting so much effort into this." The flu, the stress from work, and the sheer audacity of the request coalesced into a sharp spike of anger. Chloe, my 29-year-old sister, the aspiring lifestyle blogger, was handling everything by asking me to pay for it, as usual. "Dad, I just told you I'm sick, and I'm already doing so much," I said, my voice rising despite myself. "I pay for your and Mom's health insurance. I cover your car payments. I'm always happy to help, but Chloe needs to start taking some responsibility." A cold silence fell. Then my father's voice, which had been wheedling, turned to ice. "Responsibility? You're talking to me about responsibility? Your sister is trying to do something nice for her mother. Something special. You always have to make everything about money, don't you, Jasmine?" "I make it about money because I'm the only one who has any." I shot back, the words out before I could stop them. "Oh, here we go," he shouted, his voice booming so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "The high-end mighty project manager, looking down on all of us. You think you're so much better than your sister just because you have that fancy job. Well, let me tell you something, Jasmine. Chloe has a light in her. She has a spirit. She's trying to build something from nothing while you just sit in your office and count your money." "Dad, that is not fair," I cried, my head pounding. "I work hard for that money, the money that pays for your insurance." "Don't you dare throw that in my face," he roared. "We didn't ask you to do that. You offered. You just do it so you can hold it over our heads. You'll never get it, will you? You can have all the money in the world, but you'll always come second to your sister. You always have, and you always will." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs, all my life. Every recital, Chloe's mediocre performance was artistic, while my flawless one was robotic. Every report card, her C.S. were a sign of a creative mind, while my straight A's were proof I didn't have a social life. It was the unspoken truth of our family, the heavy blanket I'd lived under for 34 years, now finally spoken aloud in a blast of pure, unadulterated spite. The house, the mortgage, the insurance, the cars, all of it was just a tax I paid for the privilege of being the lesser daughter. A strange, cold calm washed over me, extinguishing the feverish anger. I leaned back in my chair, my voice dropping to a quiet, even tone. "You're right, Dad, I finally get it." "Good," he said, breathing heavily, sensing victory. "So you'll call Chloe, about the deposit." I almost laughed. "No, I won't be calling Chloe. And you're right, she's so full of light, I'm sure she'll have no problem covering the deposit." I paused, savoring the small, sharp click of the puzzle piece falling into place. "And from now on, you can let her pay your mortgage too, I'm done." I ended the call. My hand was perfectly steady. The flu, the ache, the fever, it all felt distant. I had just cut the cord. I should have been terrified. I should have been devastated. Instead, for the first time in my life, I felt a startling, profound sense of peace. The betrayal, I realized, wasn't just the phone call. The betrayal was my entire life. Nicholas found me a few minutes later, still sitting at my desk, staring at the black screen of my phone. He placed a mug of tea beside my hand. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said softly, rubbing my shoulders. "Was that your father?" I nodded, leaning back into his touch. He finally said it. "Said what, honey?" "That I'll always come second to Chloe." Nicholas let out a long, slow breath. He'd been a witness to my family's toxic dynamic for the 10 years we'd been together. He despised it, but he respected my attempts to manage it. "Jasmine, I'm so sorry. What brought this on?" "Mom's birthday dinner. Chloe is planning it and wants me to pay the deposit for the private room. I said no, and he exploded." "Good for you," he said, his voice firm. "For saying no, I mean." "I said more than no, Nick," I admitted, my voice small. "I told him I was done. I told him to let Chloe pay the mortgage from now on." Nicholas froze, his hands stilled on my shoulders. "Jasmine, you mean, you told him about the mortgage?" "Not exactly, I just said let her pay it." I don't think he understood. Not really. He thinks the house is covered by that grant. I finally turned to look at him, meeting his steady, concerned gaze. "I'm cutting them off, Nick, for real this time. The insurance, the car payments, and the house, I'm calling Mia tomorrow." He studied my face for a long moment, then a slow smile spread across his. "Okay," he said. "It's time. It's long past time. What do you need from me?" "Just be here. This is going to get ugly." "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, kissing my forehead. "Now drink your tea, you still have a fever." The ugliness started less than an hour later. My phone, which had been silent, rang again. It was my father. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. I ignored it. Then a text. "Jasmine, call me now." "This isn't funny. What did you mean about the mortgage?" "Pick up the phone. Your mother is upset." I silenced my phone and showed the texts to Nicholas. "He's starting to figure it out," I murmured. "He'll be blaming you for upsetting Sophie, not himself for being a monster," Nicholas predicted darkly. "Let him stew. You need to rest." He was right. I was exhausted, but the cold adrenaline was still pumping. I turned my phone off completely, something I never did, and let Nicholas lead me back to the sofa. The next morning, I woke up feeling clearer, both in my head and in my sinuses. The fever had broken. I turned my phone on, and it immediately exploded with a cascade of notifications. 23 missed calls, 17 from my father, 6 from my mother. A dozen texts, each more frantic than the last. "Dad, Jasmine, I'm serious. I just got an email from the bank about the mortgage payment. It's late. The grant program always pays on the 1st. "Mom, Jasmine, honey, please call. Your father is in a state. He said you had a fight. Please just talk to him." "Dad, you did this. This is your fault. You canceled the grant. You're trying to make us homeless." "Mom, please, Jasmine, what is going on? What did you mean about Chloe paying the mortgage? She can't even pay her own rent." That last text from my mother, a flash of accidental, desperate honesty, was the one that stuck. She can't even pay her own rent. My sister, the successful blogger, who was planning a lavish dinner at the Saffron Grill. I saved a screenshot of the text. "Morning," I said to Nicholas, who was already in the kitchen making coffee. "The grant payment is officially late, and it seems my mother knows Chloe is a fraud." "And yet, she still lets your father worship the ground Chloe walks on," he said, handing me a mug. "It's enabling, plain, and simple." "I know." I took a sip of coffee, the hot liquid grounding me. "I'm calling Mia. It's time to pull the plug. But I think I need to do more than just pull the plug. They're going to paint me as the villain. The rich, spiteful daughter who made her parents homeless out of jealousy." "They will," Nicholas agreed. "So what are you thinking?" A thought, cold and precise, began to form in my mind. They've been lying to everyone for years. Chloe with her fake success. My father with his pride, pretending he didn't need my help. They've built this entire facade. I looked at Nicholas, a new, hard resolve in my eyes. They've forgotten one crucial thing. "What's that?" "I'm a project manager. My entire job is managing risks, tracking details, and documenting everything. And for 5 years, I've been documenting this." My devotion to my parents, specifically to my mother, had been the defining feature of my adult life. Sophie was a kind, gentle woman, but one who had been worn down to a nub by my father's bluster and disappointment. She was the peacemaker, the one who would slip me $20 when I was in college after my father had refused, whispering, "Don't tell him." She was the one who genuinely celebrated my successes, even if she did so in private, so as not to upset Chloe. Everything I did was to protect her. The health insurance was for her. The car payments were so she could have a reliable vehicle to visit her sister. The mortgage was so she would never have to suffer the humiliation of losing her home, a home she had painstakingly built over 40 years. My father, David, saw these acts not as support, but as obligation. In his mind, I was the responsible one, which was his code for boring and dutiful. I was the pack mule, expected to carry the family's burdens without complaint, while my sister Chloe was the show pony, meant to be admired. Chloe, my sister, was a masterpiece of curated illusion. At 29, she had never held a real job for more than a few months. Her entire identity was wrapped up in her influencer brand, which seemed to consist of taking artfully staged photos of lattes, borrowed designer bags, and meals at restaurants she couldn't afford. Her social media was a pastel-hued fantasy of success, full of captions about living your truth and building an empire. In reality, she lived in a tiny, rented apartment, drowning in credit card debt. But to my father, she was a star. He bragged about her thousands of followers, most of whom were likely bought, and her brand partnerships, which were usually just free samples of face cream. Chloe, for her part, had mastered the art of weaponizing my father's favoritism. She was perpetually in crisis, perpetually the victim. She would call my father, weeping, about how hard it was to be a creative, how draining it was to be so empathetic to the world. My father would then call me, demanding I help my sister, which always meant giving her money. The last time I'd seen her in person was a month ago. She'd shown up at my house unannounced, dressed in a brand new designer coat, and immediately started complaining about her landlord. "He's just evil, Jasmine," she'd sighed, flopping onto my plush sofa. "He doesn't understand the pressure I'm under. He's threatening to evict me over one late payment." "Chloe, this is the 3rd time this year," I said, trying to keep my patience. "Exactly, he's harassing me," she'd countered, completely missing the point. "Anyway, I was thinking, since you and Nick are doing so well, maybe you could just, co-sign a new lease for me, just until my new sponsorship deal comes through." I had refused, politely but firmly. She'd stormed out, accusing me of being jealous of her freedom. Now, remembering that conversation, I realized the full extent of her manipulation. She wasn't just irresponsible. She was a predator, and my parents were her primary victims. And I, by providing the financial safety net, had been her chief enabler. My father's call had shattered the entire system. He had confirmed, in no uncertain terms, that my sacrifice meant nothing. I was just the bank, and the bank was now closed. I dialed Mia. "Jasmine," her cheerful voice came through the line. "Tell me you're calling to finally schedule that spa day." "Not exactly, Mia," I said, my voice grim. "I'm calling to pull the plug on Project Nightingale." Project Nightingale was the code name we'd given the trust that paid my parents' mortgage. Mia was silent for a beat. "Oh, wow, okay. It finally happened, didn't it?" "It happened. He chose Chloe, and he made sure I knew it." "Jasmine, I'm so sorry, but also, I'm proud of you. So, what's the plan? Just stop the payments? Because the next one is overdue. The bank has already sent the first notice to the trust, which, per your instructions, we haven't forwarded." "That's the first step," I said. "I want the foreclosure process to begin. Officially, I want them to get the scary letters, the ones with TH. Red ink." "That's easy," Mia said, her tone shifting from friend to lawyer. "They'll get a notice of intent to foreclose in about 2 weeks. But Jasmine, are you sure you want to let it go that far? What about Sophie?" This was the hard part. That's where the second part of the plan comes in. I'm not going to let them lose the house. I'm going to buy it. Mia let out a low whistle. "How, at the auction?" "No, I'm going to make them an offer. I'm going to set up a new LLC, and that LLC is going to offer to buy the house from them in a short sale for the exact amount owed on the mortgage. It will save their credit from a foreclosure, and they'll be so desperate, they'll have to take it." "And then what?" Mia asked, clearly catching on. "You'll be their landlord." "I'll be their landlord," I confirmed. "And I'm going to need you to draw up the tightest, most ironclad lease agreement in human history. No lifestyle bloggers living rent-free. No unapproved guests staying for more than 48 hours. And the rent will be the exact amount of the mortgage I was paying all along." "Jasmine," Mia said, a slow smile in her voice, "this is diabolical, I love it. But what about Chloe? You know she's the root of this." "Oh, I'm not done," I said, pulling up the screenshot of my mother's text. "They've forgotten who I am. They think I'm just a walking ATM. They forgot that I manage multi-million-dollar construction projects. I know how to do an audit." "What are you auditing?" "My sister. I'm going to find out exactly where all her money is coming from, because it's not from me anymore. And if my mom is right that she can't pay her own rent, how is she planning a party at the Saffron Grill?" I looked at my wall, at the framed photo of my mother, Sophie, smiling on a beach vacation I had paid for. They've been living in a fantasy. It's time for a reality check. The shift from passive victim to active strategist was immediate. The moment I hung up with Mia, the fog of my flu-addled grief evaporated, replaced by the familiar, cold clarity of a complex project taking shape. I opened my laptop and created a new file, codenamed Operation Second Place. My first task was to build a complete financial picture of my family. I wasn't just a benefactor, I was a creditor. And I was about to do what I should have done 5 years ago, a full-scale risk assessment. I started with the house. Mia got to work immediately, stopping the payments and preparing the legal framework for my LLC, Northwood Holdings, to make its move. Within days, the predictable panic began. My phone was a constant barrage of hysterical, accusing, and then pathetically pleading messages from my father. "Dad, they're going to take the house, Jasmine, all because you had a tantrum. This is your mother's home." "Dad, fine, I'm sorry. I was angry, I didn't mean it. Just fix this. Call the grant people and fix it." I didn't respond to a single one. Instead, I focused on Chloe. My sister's life was an open book, or so she thought. Her Instagram was a daily feed of her supposed success. I scrolled back for years. Every brunch meeting, every new collab, every shopping spree. I cross-referenced the dates with my own bank statements. The pattern was sickeningly clear. Chloe posts a photo at a high-end restaurant captioned, "Celebrating a new deal?" 3 days earlier, a $500 transfer from me to my father after he'd called about a plumbing emergency. Chloe posts a selfie in a new designer coat captioned, "Hard work pays off." 1 day earlier, a $1,000 transfer from me to my mother for property taxes. I wasn't just paying their mortgage, I was funding Chloe's entire fake life. My help was being laundered through my parents and handed directly to her. My father's rage, his defense of her spirit. It was all a performance to protect his golden child, the one who made him feel exciting and relevant, while I, the boring, responsible one, paid the bills. This was my leverage. This was the clever trap. The grant I had created was, through Mia, legally structured as a zero-interest loan with the house as collateral. The loan was registered to the trust, Project Nightingale. I hadn't just been paying the mortgage, I had been holding the mortgage. The bank wasn't the primary lien holder. I was. My parents thought they were about to be foreclosed on by the bank. They had no idea the bank was only the secondary lender. The real power, the person who could call the entire debt due at any time, was me. And I had 5 years of bank statements showing exactly where my loans had really gone. The next step was to find out how Chloe was planning to pay for this beautiful dinner at the Saffron Grill. I called the restaurant. "Hi," I said, putting on my most professional project manager voice. "I'm calling on behalf of Chloe last name. I'm her event coordinator, and I just need to confirm the details for the deposit on the private room for Sophie's birthday." The hostess was polite. "Ah, yes, the booking for this Saturday. Let me see." "Oh, I'm afraid that reservation was never confirmed, ma'am. We were holding it, but the deposit was never paid. The room has been booked by another party." My blood ran cold. She hadn't even paid the deposit. She had tried to bully me into paying for it, and when I'd said no, she'd just let the reservation go. She was going to wait until the last minute, then call my mother in tears, blaming the restaurant or some other fake crisis, and my mother, in turn, would have her birthday ruined. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Chloe wasn't just manipulative. She was actively cruel, willing to sabotage our mother's happiness to maintain her victim status. I called Mia back. "Change of plans. The LLC isn't just buying the house. I want you to start the proceedings to call the entire loan due. Immediately. We're not doing a short sale. We are foreclosing. They have 30 days to pay back the full 5 years of payments, or I take possession of the house." "Jasmine, that's aggressive," Mia said carefully. "It's not aggressive, Mia. It's a hostile takeover," I replied, my voice steady. "They think I'm the second-place daughter. They've forgotten that in business, second place is just the first loser. I'm not losing, not this time." I had the leverage, I had the documentation, and now I had the motive. The trap was set. The official legal notice from Project Nightingale Trust, delivered via certified mail and requiring a signature, landed on my parents' doorstep 2 days later. The 30-day countdown had begun. The explosion was nuclear. This time, it wasn't just my father. My mother, Sophie, called me, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. "Jasmine, a letter. It says we have to pay back all the grant money. $120,000. It says they're foreclosing. Jasmine, it's a mistake. You have to help us. You're the only one who can fix this." My heart ached for her, for the genuine terror in her voice. But it was an ache tempered by the cold knowledge that her terror was a product of her own willful blindness. "I can't fix this, Mom," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm not part of that grant program." I told Dad I was done. But you know people," she pleaded. "You're so good with this stuff, your father. He's a mess, Jasmine. He's just sitting in the living room, staring at the wall. Please." "Where is Chloe?" I asked, the question sharp as glass. "Where is the daughter with the spirit, the one who's building an empire? Surely she can help." My mother was silent. The silence was more damning than any confession. She's busy, honey, with her work." "With her work? Mom," I called the Saffron Grill. "There is no party. She never paid the deposit. She was going to let you think you were having a beautiful dinner right up until the moment you arrived and were turned away. That's who you're protecting. A strangled gasp came from her end of the line. No, she wouldn't. She said the restaurant made a mistake. Did she ask you to call me and beg for the money? Did she tell you it was my fault the party was canceled because the second-place daughter wouldn't pay? My mother started crying again, a weak, defeated sound. I don't know what to do. We're going to be homeless. David is going to. I can't. There is one option, I said, activating the next phase of my plan. I have a friend, a lawyer, who runs an investment firm, Northwood Holdings. They might be willing to buy the house. In a short sale, it would wipe out the debt and you'd be able to walk away. It's the only way to avoid having a foreclosure on your credit. Sell, she whispered, horrified, sell our home. It's either sell it or have it taken from you, I said flatly. I'll have my friend Mia send over the paperwork. You and Dad should look it over. I hung up and immediately called Nicholas. Phase 2 is engaged. They're broken, they're terrified. They're going to fight it, but they'll sign. And Chloe, he asked. She's next. The family meeting happened that weekend. It was not a request, it was a summons. My father, mother, and Chloe arrived at my house. It was the first time they had set foot in it in over 6 months. My father looked gray and shrunken. My mother's eyes were red and puffy. Chloe, however, was a vision of indignant rage. She swept in, still wearing her designer coat, her face a mask of contempt. I cannot believe you, Jasmine, she spat, before she was even fully in the room. Letting this happen, making Mom and Dad sick with worry, all because you're jealous. Hello, Chloe, I said calmly. Nicholas was standing beside me, his presence a solid wall. Please, sit down, we have a lot to discuss. I'm not sitting, she shrieked. You need to fix this, you need to call your G. Rant people and tell them to stop. You're trying to ruin us. I'm not trying to ruin you, Chloe, and there are no grant people to call. What does that mean? My father mumbled, his voice hoarse. I looked him dead in the eye. It means there was never a grant, Dad. There was no housing assistance program. There was just me. I've been paying your mortgage for 5 years. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face went from gray to stark white. Chloe just stared, her eyes narrowing. You're lying, Chloe said, but her voice faltered. Am I? I turned to my laptop, which was connected to the large TV in our living room. I clicked a button. A spreadsheet appeared on the screen. This, I said, my voice resonating with the cold authority of a boardroom presentation, is an audit of Project Nightingale. On the left, you'll see every mortgage payment I've made since 2020. A total of $121,450.60, and on the right. I clicked again. A second set of columns appeared, filled with bank transfers, restaurant charges, and boutique names. Is where the money I gave you in addition to the mortgage went. This $500 for the plumbing emergency on March 12th. It's funny, because on March 14th, Chloe, you posted this. I clicked, and her Instagram photo of a brunch meeting appeared. The bill at that restaurant for 4 people was $480. I continued, line by line. The property tax money that became her new coat. The car repair fund that paid for her weekend spa trip. I had it all. The dates, the amounts, the Instagram posts. It was a meticulous, undeniable record of their fraud. My mother was openly weeping now. David, you told me. You told me that was from your pension. My father couldn't speak. He was staring at the screen, his mouth open, his illusion shattering in real time. Chloe, however, went on the attack. You spied on me, you're a psycho, you've been stalking me. It's not stalking when you post it publicly for the world to see, Chloe, I said. It's not stalking when you use my father as a go-between to steal my money. Money I gave to keep a roof over our parents' heads. Money you used to build a life that is a complete and total lie. You bitch, she screamed, lunging at me. Nicholas stepped in front of me instantly. Don't you dare, he said, his voice a low growl she had never heard. You will sit down or you will leave. Chloe recoiled, shocked. She looked to our father. Dad, are you going to let her talk to me like this? My father finally looked up. He looked at me, at the spreadsheet, at Chloe. He saw the designer coat. He saw his weeping wife. And for the first time in his life, the programming broke. Sit down, Chloe, he whispered, his voice broken. Just sit down. The fight was over. The spell was broken. And I hadn't even presented my final solution. The silence that filled the room was heavy and suffocating. Chloe sat rigid with fury, my mother was lost in her quiet sobs, and my father just stared at the floor, the color drained from his face. The man who had roared at me over the phone, the patriarch who demanded respect, was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out old man. So, I said, clicking off the television and returning the room to normal. We have established the facts. 1, I am the sole lienholder on your house. Project Nightingale is my trust. 2, the loan is in default. 3, a significant portion of the money I have provided for emergencies has been diverted to fund Chloe's lifestyle. I walked over to the coffee table and placed a single, neatly bound document in front of my father. What is this? He asked, his hand trembling as he reached for it. That is an offer from Northwood Holdings, the LLC I mentioned to Mom. They are prepared to buy the house, effective immediately, for the exact amount owed on the loan, $121,450.60. It's a short sale. You will sign the house over to them, the debt will be considered paid in full, and the foreclosure action will be dropped. Your credit will be saved. My father fumbled with the pages, his eyes scanning the legalese he couldn't possibly understand. But, we'll have to move, we'll be homeless. No, I said, you won't. Part of the agreement is a 1-year lease, which Northwood Holdings will offer you. A tiny flicker of hope sparked in my mother's eyes. A lease. I placed a second document on the table. This is the lease agreement. You will be allowed to stay in the house as tenants. My father's relief was palpable. He slumped, grabbing for the lease. Thank you, Jasmine, God, thank you. I don't know. You should read the terms before you thank me, I interrupted. Nicholas, would you mind? Nicholas, who had been silent, stepped forward and picked up the lease. He read from it in a clear, neutral voice. Section 4A, Rent. Rent shall be set at $2,000 per month due on the 1st. This amount covers the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on the property. He paused. It is, you'll note, the exact amount of the mortgage I was paying. My father flinched. Section 5C, Occupancy, Nicholas continued. The premises are to be occupied only by the tenants listed on this agreement, David last name and Sophie last name. No other individual may reside on the property for a period exceeding 48 consecutive hours without express written consent from the landlord. Chloe's head snapped up. What? You can't do that. What if I need to stay with them? Then you have 48 hours, Chloe, I said. Just like any other guest. You will not be moving in. You will not be storing your boxes in the garage. You will not be crashing there for weeks on end when you get evicted from your own apartment. Speaking of, I turned my gaze to her. You haven't been paying your rent, have you, Chloe? I know you're at least 2 months behind. Your landlord has already filed the initial eviction paperwork. You were planning to get the money from me, and when that failed, you were going to move back home. That's why you were so desperate. Chloe's face went white. She had thought her deceptions were brilliant, but she was sloppy, leaving a trail of public records a mile wide. You have no proof, she stammered. I don't need proof. I just need to enforce my lease. If you are there on the 3rd day, Mom and Dad will be in violation, and the eviction process will begin for all of them. Are you willing to risk that, Chloe? Are you willing to make Mom and Dad homeless for real, just so you have a free place to stay? Chloe looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. This was the real confrontation. The house was just a building. The true battle was for control, for the resources she had leached for a decade. And finally, I said, looking back at my father, there's the matter of the $60,000. The money that I can prove was diverted from its intended purpose. The emergency funds that became Chloe's shopping sprees. "Jasmine, please," my mother whispered. "We will pay it back, somehow." "You don't have to," I said. "I'm willing to forgive that debt, on one condition." All three of them looked at me, trapped. "Chloe," I said, my voice dangerously soft. "You are going to get a job, a real W-2 job with a paycheck, and you are going to pay for your own apartment. You will provide me with a copy of your signed lease and your first 2 pay stubs. You will be financially independent of my parents. You will not ask them for one more dollar." "That's insane," she shrieked. You can't make me get a job." "No, I can't," I agreed. "But I can choose not to forgive the $60,000 debt. If I don't get that proof of employment and that lease from you within 30 days, I will not forgive the debt. Instead, I will file a civil suit against all 3 of you, you for fraud and them for conspiracy, for the full amount. And I will win. I have the bank statements, I have the texts, I have the Instagram posts. It's a slam dunk case, and my lawyer is already drawing up the complaint." I let the threat hang in the air. Ruin, public, legal, financial ruin. "Or," I continued, "you can get a job. The debt vanishes. Mom and Dad get to stay in their home, and this all goes away. The choice is yours. You have 30 days to sign the sale agreement and the lease. And Chloe, your 30-day countdown starts now." The weeks that followed were a tense, cold war. My parents signed the sale agreement and the new lease within 48 hours. They were terrified, broken, and had no other choice. The house was officially sold to Northwood Holdings. I was, for all intents and purposes, their landlord. Chloe, however, was silent. She had stormed out of my house and refused to answer any calls from my parents. She had, in effect, vanished, leaving them to face the fallout alone. My father, to my surprise, seemed to change. He called me once not to rage, but to ask, in a small voice, "Jasmine, the first month's rent. It's due on the 1st. I get my pension check on the 3rd. Is it okay if it's 2 days late? Just this first time." "That's fine, Dad," I said, feeling a strange, hollow pity. "I can set up the automatic payment for the 3rd of the month. That's not a problem." "Thank you," he whispered, and hung up. The lion had finally become a mouse. The real showdown, however, was yet to come. The event my sister had failed to plan, my mother's 60th birthday, was still happening. Nicholas and I had taken it over. We booked a beautiful, modest private room at a lovely Italian restaurant that my mother actually liked, not the flashy influencer trap Chloe had chosen. We invited a small group of her closest family and friends, about 15 people in all. My parents, shell-shocked, had agreed to come. We had not heard from, nor invited, Chloe. The night of the dinner, my mother looked relieved. She was dressed nicely. He was smiling, and for the first time, she wasn't anxiously scanning the room for Chloe, waiting for the next drama. My father was quiet but polite, speaking with his sister and shaking hands with Nicholas's parents. It was peaceful. Until she arrived. Halfway through the main course, the door to the private room swung open. There stood Chloe. She was not dressed for a nice dinner. She was in ripped jeans and a tight top, her hair a mess, her eyes wild. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. The room fell silent. My mother gasped, "Chloe." "You're having a party," Chloe said, her voice trembling with a toxic mix of self-pity and rage. "You're having a party, without me." "Chloe, honey, please," my mother started, rising from her chair. We didn't know where you were." "You knew," she shrieked, pointing a finger at me. "She did this. She banned you from talking to me. She's trying to replace me." I slowly placed my napkin on the table and stood up. "No one is replacing you, Chloe. We just didn't think you'd want to come to a second-place party." The other guests, my aunts, uncles, my mother's friends, looked on, horrified and confused. "You think you're so clever," Chloe snarled, taking a few steps into the room. "You think you've won. You took my parents' house. You're evil, Jasmine. You're a monster." "I am their landlord," I said, my voice cutting through the room, clear and cold. "I am the one paying the bank, just as I was the one paying the bank for the last 5 years. The only thing that has changed is that the arrangement is now official. You forced me out, she cried, tears of rage starting to stream down her face. You ruined my life. I lost my apartment. I'm living in my car, all because of you. A collective gasp went through the room. This was her trump card, her final, desperate bid for sympathy. She was the victim, homeless and alone, destroyed by her cruel, wealthy sister. My father started to rise, his old instincts kicking in. Chloe, in your car. I put a hand up, motioning for him to stop. I just looked at her. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. Yes, Chloe, you're in your car, I said. And do you know why you're in your car? Is it because I stopped giving you my money? Or is it because, in the last 30 days, you have not applied for a single job? She stared at me, dumbfounded. You see, I continued, speaking to the whole room, I gave Chloe a choice. I would have forgiven all the money she stole from me, over $60,000, if she did just one thing. Get a job, any job, to prove she could finally stand on her own 2 feet and stop bleeding our parents dry. But she didn't, did you, Chloe? I walked over to my purse and pulled out a stack of envelopes. She didn't because she was too busy. She was busy applying for 3 new high-limit credit cards. She was busy trying to get a personal loan, using our parents' old home as collateral, which she was denied for because I own the house. She was busy messaging my husband, Nicholas, asking him for money behind my back. I threw the envelopes on the table. They were the credit card rejection letters. They had been mailed to my parents' house, her last known address, and my father, bless his new, terrified honesty, had given them to me. Chloe's face crumpled. It wasn't sadness. It was the blank, total humiliation of a con artist whose every last mark had been revealed. My mother, who had been watching this with a hand over her heart, finally made her move. She walked past Chloe, past the envelopes, and stood next to me. She looked at her youngest daughter. You asked Nicholas for money?" she whispered, her voice shaking with a new, cold anger I had never heard. Chloe had no answer. "Get out," Sophie said. "Mom," Chloe choked out. "Get out," my mother repeated, her voice rising to a powerful command. "You will not ruin this. You will not ruin anything else. Get out. We are done." Chloe stood there for a moment, utterly defeated. The audience she had expected to rally to her side, her family, her mother, was staring at her with disgust. She looked at me one last time, her eyes promising murder. Then she turned and she ran. The door slammed shut. The silence returned, but this time it was a silence of relief. My mother turned to me, her eyes full of tears, but she was smiling. "Jasmine," she said, taking my hand, "thank you for everything." She then turned to the room. "I'm so sorry, everyone, please, let's eat. It's my birthday." The downfall of Chloe was as swift as it was complete. After being publicly exiled from my mother's birthday, she disappeared. We found out a week later from my aunt that she had finally, truly hit rock bottom and had called her, weeping, from a gas station 3 states away. Her car had been repossessed. She had nothing. My aunt, a no-nonsense woman, bought her a bus ticket, not home, but to a cousin in Texas who had a job waiting at a diner. Chloe, for the first time in her life, had no other option. She took it. We haven't heard from her since, though my aunt occasionally reports that she is, in fact, still employed as a waitress. My father's transformation was the most profound. Being a tenant in the house he used to own, paying rent to the daughter he had dismissed, broke his pride in a way that was absolute. But from that brokenness, something new emerged. He and my mother started talking. He took on more hours at the hardware store. He started fixing things around the house himself, not out of obligation, but, it seemed, out of a newfound respect for the property. Our relationship is not fixed. It will never be the warm, loving bond I see in movies. But it is functional. I am their landlord. They are good tenants. They pay their rent on the 3rd of every month. When I come over, my father makes me a cup of tea and asks about my work, and he actually listens to the answer. The roaring lion is gone, replaced by a quiet man who seems, in his old age, to finally understand the value of the daughter he'd ignored. The greatest healing, however, was with my mother. In the weeks after the dinner, she and I began to talk, really talk. She admitted her guilt, her weakness, her fear of my father's temper, and her own blindness to Chloe's manipulations. I wanted her to be happy," she told me, crying. "And I let her convince me that you were the strong one, that you didn't need me. It was the biggest mistake of my life, Jasmine." We started having lunch, just the two of us. We went to the spa Damia had always wanted me to schedule. I was no longer her savior or her bank. I was just her daughter. As for me and Nicholas, our life is quiet. We're planning a trip to Italy, something I'd always put off because of family obligations. My phone doesn't ring with emergencies anymore. My bank account is my own. The Operation Second Place file on my computer is closed. Last week, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, hand-carved wooden bird. It was from my father. He'd made it in his workshop. The note attached was only 3 words, "For your garden." It wasn't an apology, not really. But as I placed it on my windowsill, watching the morning light catch the wood, I realized it was something better. It was a start. I wasn't second place anymore. I was just Jasmine. And for the first time, that was more than enough.